You weren't into high school guys.
No, that was just you.
I have a question for you guys. Have you ever found a show that you hoped was going to be really good, and then it turned out to be amazing? Yeah, it happens pretty rarely, but it does happen. It has happened to me a couple times, but there's one show that I was very much in love with. I am of course talking about Scream the TV series, which is a slasher show based off of the original Scream movies. Not many people expected this show to become a hit series, and honestly, neither did I. But if I'm being completely honest, this show is just so solid. And quick side note, I have noticed that I keep doing reviews on TV shows, and I haven't really reviewed any movies yet, so let me know what kind of movies you guys want me to review, like horror or even the MCU if you guys want. So yeah, just let me know in the comments. Alright, back to Scream. Scream is the best slasher series I have ever seen. One of the reasons for this is because Scream is my favorite franchise of all time. And if you don't know what Scream is, let me explain it to you.
Write your blood type on your boots and leave your letters to your loved ones. Let's shake and Jake.
The original Scream tells the story of a girl, Sidney Prescott, who is being targeted by a masked killer who murdered her mother 1 year before. Sidney and her friends, along with other characters, start to die one by one in the hands of this so-called killer, making everyone who is still alive a suspect. The killer is the most important part because it can literally be anyone. You never know who's actually innocent and who the killer is. As long as the killer is alive and masked, the list of suspects gets thinner and thinner, expanding the amount of suspicion, causing the characters not knowing who to trust. Another important part is that these movies take place in our world with our logic, and that the characters have all come to learn and love the same horror movies we love. Everyone knows Jason and Freddy and Leatherface, and the characters know the rules of horror films that would most likely ensure their survival. However, when the killer shows up, our characters learn that it doesn't matter if you follow the rules or not, because they're gonna die regardless.
Everybody's a suspect!
3 more movies later and we come to the TV series, where the same thing happens except with entirely new characters, a completely new story, and a handful of new gruesome kills. Plus, turning a movie franchise into a TV series is very difficult to succeed with. However, the TV series is very close to perfection. It is that good. For this story, we have Emma Duval, who is the main character and the primary target for the killer. We soon meet all the other characters, or suspects if you prefer, and we get to learn about each one of them. Soon enough, the killer shows up and starts to commit murders around Lakewood, deceiving his or her appearance with a mask worn by another infamous killer, Brandon James. Brandon James was physically deformed and killed a handful of students about 20 years ago, and who also nearly succeeded in killing Emma's father. This backstory is a very important part of this story that ties in as the killer's motive. I know that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense as to why that's the killer's motive, but that's because the rest of the story has a lot of secrets and spoilers that I won't be talking about just yet. Most of the characters have secrets or shady personalities to make them suspicious, while they develop and build up their chemistry with other characters. This series also takes its time unraveling the story and making new plot holes that shakes it up. And that just makes it more difficult to interpret any evidence that you know, and connecting it to the killer. There are so many great things about the show, but now I'm gonna have to list off my complaints. But don't worry, because there's not much on there. The main thing I dislike in this show is that most of the cast is amazing, but some of them aren't given the same amount of chances for them to shine, especially the actors who play Gustavo and Eli. I also have the opinion that Willa Fitzgerald is not a very good actress. Her performance really lacks at times, and I just don't find it enjoyable.
Are you real?
However, Bex Taylor Kloss is the most entertaining person in the whole show, right next to John Carna and Carlson Young. These 3 people are one of the reasons why this show is really good, because not only are they so good at acting, but their characters are also very fun to watch.
Hey! No. Hey, protect and serve my ass! Where was he? She was right.
Alright, I'm moving on to spoilers now, so go to this time if you don't want to hear it, you know the drill. Alright, here we go. First off, Piper being the killer in season 1 was a great idea, and it made a lot of sense. Maggie, who's Emma's mom, who actually grew up with Brandon James, had a baby with him after she was cheated on one night, and Piper being that child. Problem is, Maggie was a minor in high school and had to give Piper up for adoption. Not only that, but since Maggie did not stand up for Brandon on the night of those murders, he died due to the police taking him down. These motives are completely understandable, and it is explained in depth to the audience and characters outright. But even though Piper was the primary killer, it turns out that Kieran was the second killer. And even though I liked Piper as the killer, I still feel like having Kieran as the accomplice is a little whack. I mean, the dots connect, it makes sense, but it kind of feels like we got cheated, considering that it was pretty clear that Eli was the killer. But it wasn't him, it was Kieran. Another thing I really like is actually something that I've never seen before. I'm of course talking about Audrey's plot in season 2. Piper finding Emma and all the bloodshed that followed is because Audrey was in contact with Piper for months. Even though Audrey's intentions were innocent and was clueless about her being the killer, she still dragged Piper to Lakewood. The killer finds this out and sees that Audrey would do anything to keep it a secret. The killer then uses it as leverage against Audrey, in order for her to do certain things that works in the killer's favor. This is a very clever idea, and it worked out perfectly. I'm very satisfied with how it came out.
Now we just need a password. What's something Nina would use?
Try Thunder, bitch. Too obvious.
To address my main points again, this is the closest representation of a slasher show done right. The characters are all realistic and it helps with the mystery aspect of the story. The whole story of Brandon James and the present timeline of events mixes in very well, which is rare for a series like this. Just like any show, it has a couple flaws, but I still believe it all works out. The characters are awesome, the story is great, and I just love it. So 9 out of 10. I love this show, I love Scream, and you can't change my mind.